Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
I'm also an Oscar god.
So yeah,
not really.
You're probably going to get most of these right, would be my guess. But
we'll see.
Is there anything, I mean, I guess what's the big shock is Coda. We haven't even gotten into we're going to try to do our picks this week of what we think should win and what will actually win. And that's how we'll go about that. Sometimes I'm sure they will line up and other times not so much. So
I'm going to do something different this year, and I'm kind of surprising you with this. I'm going to do who I think will win, who I think might be a surprise, and who I would vote for. And strangely enough, for almost every category, it's 3 different choices for each one.
Interesting. So you think that the dark horse that might win in a particular category is not the one you would pick, but could potentially win, even though people are not expecting that to happen?
Correct.
Wow. Interesting.
Yes.
Well, do you have that for this first one, Best Actor?
I do. Best Actor. Who will win? Will Smith. And I'll be super happy about it. I loved him in that movie. I talked about it months ago. I think he's deserving, and I don't like the narrative that people create around Oscar campaigns, but that's part of it. Everybody says he's due, it's his time, but I feel like that's okay. The performance is strong enough to say all that other stuff doesn't matter to me, but it's okay that other stuff. His campaign has been brilliant. He's been charming. He's been sophisticated. He's won all of the awards that indicate that he will win. That said, the surprise could be Benedict Cumberbatch.
Really? So you're talking about Will Smith for King Richard and Benedict Cumberbatch for Power of the Dog.
Correct.
So yeah. Okay, I think I know where you're going with who you want to win, and I probably agree with you. I do think that Will Smith's going to win just because of all this other stuff. But yeah. Do you think Benedict Cumberbatch, is it the whole like Power of the Dog runs the table thing? Where that would be the only way that he'd be able to get in as Best Actor, Benedict Cumberbatch?
No, not necessarily. Last year shook my world when it came to being an Oscar god, small g, not large g. So I was being facetious, of course, 95% being facetious, the rest being that I have been able to predict things in the future, shocking things that most people went away, and then they happen. So last year kind of shook me. And that said, everybody thought Chadwick Boseman was going to win, and then Anthony Hopkins did win. And then when Anthony Hopkins did win, that kind of made sense. It made sense. Now, Will Smith won the Bafta, which was an indication last year. Now, I think this year is a perfect example of how none of that stuff really matters until the envelope is opened. Then we can talk about, Will Smith did win the Screen Actors Guild. He didn't win the Golden Globe, did win the Golden Globe. He did win the Bafta. So blah, blah, blah. Because last year, everybody said, we should have known Anthony Hopkins because he won the Bafta. But everybody was certain it was Chadwick Boseman. So on that alone, everybody's certain it's Will Smith, but the surprise could be Benedict Cumberbatch. That said, that's not who I would vote for.
Oh, I know exactly who you're going to say.
Who would that be, Josh?
Denzel Washington.
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. My mind is blown by his performance. My mind is blown by that movie. I'm transfixed by it. And, we've talked about Shakespeare in the past, and Shakespeare is, I'm into it, but he's not necessarily my best friend. And I've always stood on the side and not really fully comprehended, but there's nothing that man says in that movie that does not make sense to me. Everything makes sense to me. And the one or two things that script-wise that might not make too much sense about a person his age playing the part, he makes it make sense. So I am all about Denzel Washington, and I'm all about The Tragedy of Macbeth.
I would say that would be my pick also for best actor. Who I would want to win is Denzel Washington. And I think that you're right. He makes Shakespeare accessible. And that is something that is really difficult to do. And like you said in our, some of our previous podcasts, it's like there are certain things that you don't know what they are, or you don't know how they would necessarily fit into the narrative if you're reading the play on the page. But the way that he is able to give over that information in either his actions or his look or how he carries himself is enough to get you to understand the actual things that are going on in the play and what his character's motivation is and what his character's going through at the time and how his character reacts to other people. And I mean, I think that Frances McDormand, same thing. There's great performances in that, but if we're talking about people nominated for Academy Awards right now, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of an actor really doing the job.
I'm not certain of anything I'm getting ready to say tonight. Uncertainty can be a guiding light, and I'm gonna trip with that. But I am certain of this. 5-10 years from now, when we look back on this year, people will say, "Oh, it's so great, Will Smith won. I'm so glad." But man, did we not take Denzel into consideration like we should have? Because by that point, everybody will have seen that in their schools. Everybody will have taught that version of Macbeth. Everybody will have watched it, and they will all, I'm not saying they're going to say that he should have won instead of the person who does win, but they will be saying, why was he not more of a contender? Because he is so great. All right, let's move on.
Best Actress. So we've got for Best Actress. There is Jessica Chastain for Eyes of Tammy Faye, Olivia Colman for The Lost Daughter, Kristen Stewart for Spencer, Nicole Kidman for Being the Ricardos, and Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers.
Okay, so yes, you did say that, and we do need to talk about it, but I do want to mention Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom, and Javier Bardem for Being the Ricardos. We didn't do their list, and they are nominated,
right.
and they're both deserving of the nomination. They're both fantastic. Okay, so Best Actress. Okay, you go first this time.
I think Jessica Chastain's going to win. And it was a great performance. We talked about it. And everybody's going to say transformation because that's the easiest thing to say as far as her how she physically looks different than she normally looks. But I think that the way that she carries herself as that character is very consistent throughout the film. And that's a huge thing. It's a big person that she is inhabiting. That's a big quote unquote character, but it's still a real person. And I think that she does it justice throughout the film. For me though, it's like a photo finish between Olivia Colman and Kristen Stewart. And I have both of them selected.
I love this podcast. I love doing this with you. You're going to love what I'm going to say.
So yeah, I think that with what Kristen Stewart had to do, she did better than I thought she ever could. And with Olivia Colman, I couldn't not say that she should win the Academy Award because why am I so rooting for someone who is at every turn, doing things that are kind of antithetical to being a mother, to being even an acquaintance. So, and she's it's such an awkward character, but it feels natural. So I don't know how she did that.
I don't either. I will say this is a great category this year. These performances are outstanding, all 5 of them. Penelope Cruz broke my soul in Parallel Mothers. I have seen Being the Ricardos a second time, and what I did was I listened instead of watched for a while, and man, she really does have that voice down. At first, I didn't think that she did. And her moment-to-moment work, when Nicole Kidman walks past Javier Bardem and says, "Well, you told me to be nice. I was nice, right? Right? I was nice." And she keeps walking in that Aaron Sorkin dialogue, difficult to do. And she's a believable character. So I'm going to give her that. That said, this is a tough year because it's unprecedented. No film has been nominated for Best Picture that a Best Actress is in this year. That's never happened before. Nobody from the Best Actress list, Oscar list, was nominated for the Bafta. All of the awards have been split all over the place. All the critic awards went to Kristen Stewart. Now, just recently, the SAG and Golden Globe went to Jessica Chastain. But during that whole process, if you go back and read it, everybody keeps going, but what happened to Olivia Colman? How come? Why is she keeps coming to my mind? Why does she keep coming to my mind? Why is she still I keep thinking it might happen for her? So that said, I think Jessica Chastain will win. And I'm good with that because we talked about The Eyes of Tammy Faye before she was the front runner. And I was trying to remember, and I was asking you last week, if you remember, I think I saw a picture of Jim and Tammy Faye Baker years ago. And I said to you or somebody, wow, why don't they make a biopic about them? Because whoever plays her is going to win the Oscar. Now, There's no proof that I said that until I find it, but I know I felt that or thought it. So I don't know if I said it to anybody. I'm pretty sure I did, though. It's an Oscar caliber performance because of the heart and soul that she brings to the story. Those small minor moments when she's talking to all the big guys around the table. Well, that's not what Jesus would do. Well, what would Jesus do, Jim? And she really feels that, well, we can't do that because that's not what a Christian would do. And I believe that she always wanted to do the right thing when it came to walking in the light of the Lord and what her beliefs are. And that's hard to pull off without seeming pretentious. But the scene I hope they show at the Oscars is her Oscar-winning scene, is when she gets out of the car at the apartment after Jim went to jail and the guys are making fun of her. And she walks over there with such dignity and strength and says to them, oh, no. We can make fun of each other, but first we're going to meet each other. My name's Tammy Faye. What's yours? She broke my heart at that point. And for that moment alone, it's an Oscar-winning performance. Plus, it's Jessica Chastain's time, and I'm good with that. But Jessica Chastain will win. Kristen Stewart will be the surprise. But I would vote for Olivia Colman. Because I don't understand that movie, The Lost Daughter. I've seen it twice. I told you that the second time I saw it, I thought I would have a much more in-depth idea of what it was. I had no idea after the second viewing. Everything I thought about the first time did not become solidified the second time. I had way more questions the second time, but her moment-to-moment work is so solid. When they take the beach, when the family takes the beach and Olivia Colman looks up, you know exactly what she's thinking and exactly what's going on in her mind. That's not easy to do. And it's also not easy to do, and we need to credit Jessie Buckley with this too. It's not easy to play the same person with two different actresses and sort of have the same quality about you, and they both do. Now, their voices are a tad bit different, but I think that was a choice. Maggie Gyllenhaal's choice, because who she is when she's younger is not who she is when she's older. And I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about the scene that I hope they show of her for the Oscars when she talks about she left her daughters for 3 years. And then Dakota Fanning said, well, how did that feel? And she says, amazing.
Dakota Johnson,
what'd I say? Sorry, Dakota. Sorry on the Oscar pick. I got your name wrong. No disrespect. Anyway, so if I had a vote, it would be Olivia Colman because I can't stop thinking about that character.
All right. Well, so next we've got Best Supporting Actor, and that's Troy Kotsur from Coda, Cody Smith-McPhee from Power of the Dog, J.K. Simmons from Being the Ricardos, and Kieran Hines from Belfast, which I just saw last night, and I thought it was really good. I think that Troy Kotsur is going to win, and I missed Jesse Plemons for Power of the Dog. And I did that because it's highlighted a different color than all of the other ones. So I think that Jesse Plemons, he would be my vote. But Troy Kotsur is probably going to win, I guess, which is really cool, though. I mean, he had some great scenes, and it was a great role, and it was well done, and it was believable. And he had the most emotionally impactful scenes with the main character in the film. But I think for me, like we talked about in our podcast on Power of the Dog, I think that Jesse Plemons' performance, even when you put it up next to Cody Smith-McPhee's performance, it's a much more subtle performance, and there's things that can be tweaked, or that were tweaked, I think, that made a lot more impact. And I think that it, in some ways, I don't know, maybe you have an opinion on this. Do you think that the Cody Smith-McPhee character was maybe easier to play due to the rigidity of the character traits that were shown on screen, or that were asked for by the actor, versus Jesse Plemons' character?
You know, you asked me that question a lot about what I think might be easier. I don't think any of it's easy. So it's hard for me to ever look at it that way. You know what I mean? Like, do I think that Cody Smith-McPhee had some moments to where his character might have been easier to play because it made more sense and it was part of the narrative and part of the story, and as an audience member you can kind of understand it? Yes, I do. But is that easier? Maybe not. I actually think the reverse. I don't know if I would ever say I thought anything was easier than the other, because it just doesn't work that way with me. I just watched the National Theater's celebration of 50 years of being the National Theater. And they had Judi Dench and Helen Mirren and just all of these people,
All the dames.
all the dames. And there was a scene at the end when all of the actors, and they were all hugely famous and big, huge theater people, and they all came out and stood with their backs to the audience. And I think it's Frances Delacour is her name. I hope I got that right. She comes out and she does this speech about the actors. And the thing about an actor is that they're actually more scared of you than you are of them. And so you think that you might be intimidated because this is Dame Judi Dench. These aren't her words. It's just my interpretation. Sure. But really, Dame Judi Dench is petrified to walk out. And even somebody in the later stages of his career, Laurence Olivier, if you were to see him up close, he would be shaking with fear. After all of the decades, all of the accolades, all of the fame, being considered the greatest British actor of all time, he's still frightened of walking out on stage. So it's never easy. And it thrills me to hear that on so many levels because I'm petrified myself 99.9% of the time. So to say one's easier than the other is hard for me to put that together like that. Well, let's put it this way. I think you're right. I think Troy Kotsur is going to win, and you're right about his moments. It's the small moments in that movie. You have the singing moment of him holding the neck. That's the moment. That's probably the moment they're going to show. But it's actually little moments that I was taken by him with. When they're in the audience and she's singing at school and everybody starts clapping and he's looking around like, why is everybody standing up? Like he has no idea why everybody's standing up. Like, okay, sure, he can put together that they're giving her a standing ovation, but he doesn't have a concept of why. And how he hesitates when he starts to stand up, but he's like, do I? Because everybody is. Then he looks at his daughter and he's like, oh yeah, I'm proud of my daughter. So then he stands up. And when he's talking about the rap music and how loud it is and boom, 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 in the beginning of the film, when they're driving with the music so loud, it's embarrassing to her.
And she's embarrassed.
It's such a dad thing to do. So he's a real person. So I think he will win. I think Cody Smith McPhee will be the surprise because I'm not sure he's totally out of the race. He's won everything else. He has the respect of the Academy, obviously. Yes, he didn't win the SAG or blah, 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 but there's precedence for all of that. But of course, my vote would be Jesse Plemons. And because of the subtleties and that one moment, I'll never get over that one moment. I can't talk about it because it's going to get, it'll make me go again. So I think they both probably had their difficulties. The one thing that I would say that to try to answer your question is when I find something physical that I can do, that sort of calms me down. So if you watch Cody Smith McPhee, first of all, he's English or Australian. So when you hear him, he sounds nothing like he does in the movie. And he seems like, wait till you see him. He's totally a different person. His physicality as a human being is different. He's not all kind of frail looking, if you will. There's strength in that frailty in that character, but he is a little frail in that movie until he's not. So maybe it was a tad bit more interesting for him to get in because of the physicalization he could do as the character. Maybe, but I wouldn't even begin to say. But Jesse Plemons, he's my vote.
Well, speaking of physicality of characters, I think for Best Supporting Actress, my pick is Ariana DeBose from West Side Story. The other nominees, you got Kirsten Dunst from Power of the Dog, Judi Dench from Belfast, Jessie Buckley from The Lost Daughter, and Anjanou Ellis from King Richard. So I think that Ariana DeBose is going to win. Last I checked, I guess she's been winning all the stuff, but I would be totally fine with that. I think that she should win. I think that's like we talked about in our a couple of episodes ago. I think that character is a difficult character, and you brought in the whole wrinkle of not only is that a difficult character, but you're playing across from someone who played that exact role 60 years ago. And so that's got to be a whole nother wrinkle for the actress, to have to deal with that. And I think that she's singing, she's dancing, she's emoting, she's having to deal with really difficult scenes and trying to put all of that on the screen and be genuine and honor previous instances of that character, but then also kind of try to do something new with what she's doing.
Well, I think Ariana DeBose will win. And there's nothing saying that she's not going to. This I can predict. It's so funny because none of this I really am sure about. But these things that I'm sure about are outside of it. No one is talking about the fact that not only did she play across from the person who did it in 1961, that person won the Oscar for playing that role in 1961.
Right.
So no one is really talking about that. They will be on Monday after Ariana DeBose wins. They're going to say it's history in the making. Two people from the same movie, 60 years apart, won for the same part. They're really not, they're not
And
tapped
that's
into
never
that.
happened before, right?
Not that I can think of.
Because didn't Laurence Olivier win for Hamlet or something? And then Kenneth Branagh was probably nominated, but he didn't win.
Nope. He was nominated for Henry V, not for Hamlet.
Mm.
No, and Laurence Olivier did win for playing Hamlet. He's the only person to win for playing a lead Shakespeare role so far. That's my understanding. But no, this is unprecedented. So Ariana DeBose will win. Kristen Dunst is my surprise. I'm not counting out anybody from The Power of the Dog. I'm just not counting them out yet. There's just something about every time I try to solidify this category in my mind, she kept coming back to me. And then I keep seeing scenes in my head.
The piano scene, the piano banjo scene is just, and it's all her. Like you barely ever see Benedict Cumberbatch in that scene. You see little snippets of him, but it's just the dread in that scene is palpable.
And there's that scene where they're under the tree and Benedict Cumberbatch comes over and says something to her, and Peter goes, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "He's just a man, Peter, just another man." And it's devastating how much power and what she says and all the men that she's had to deal with in her life and all the men after her husband died she probably had to deal with, and all of the uncertainty about being around men in that time frame all comes out in 2 lines. So I'm not counting her out. But my vote would be Anjanae Ellis. Here's why. From the moment she takes the screen to the moment the movie's over with, she goes toe-to-toe with him. You never forget about her. She's always there. And when she has her 2 moments, the moment with the neighbor and the moment later on,
in the kitchen, is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Yep.
When she's like, "You might not have seen me, but I've been here." I can't stop thinking about her. I've seen it twice, and I watched it with my 12-year-old and 13-year-old nephew. They're big Will Smith fans. So I was trying to explain to them about the Oscars, and they know what the Oscar is, and how Will Smith has been nominated before. He hasn't won yet? Not yet. Well, he will, my nephew said after watching the movie. And my nephew's walking down the hallway, and this is exactly what he said. I said, "So you think Will Smith will win?" He goes, "Yep. And the mother too." And I was like, "What?" He was like, "The mother. You can't forget about the mother." So even in his 13-year-old mind, she affected him. She had that power, that intangible quality that a Best Supporting Actress has. She would have my vote. You know, it would be the biggest surprise of the night if she won. Like people would lose their minds. Like they would just give up. Twitter would end because people would not know how to deal with that, just because it would be unprecedented that she is pretty much the dark horse. But I think when he does win, he will thank her again, which he has in the past. And people do realize this, that it hasn't gone unnoticed, but she's going to come out stronger as an actress afterwards, because they're going to realize how much she really grounded his performance, and how, because of the scenes between them that work so well, because she puts him in his place a couple of times.
Even when he tries
Go
to
back
drive
and get
away.
my kids. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go back and get my kids. Yeah. The biggest movie star in the world in a movie that obviously she had to have known he was dialed into that. She had to have known. Now, I'm sure she wasn't worried about that per se, but you can feel that stuff. So she would be my vote.
Now, this next one's interesting. Best Director. And I mean, so here's the nominees: Jane Campion for Power of the Dog, Steven Spielberg for West Side Story, Ryosuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, and Kenneth Branagh for Belfast. There's some crossover. I mean, yeah, there's crossover with Best Picture, but the big movies that have taken over all of the categories, you don't really have that with the representation of the directors in this list. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I think Jane Campion's going to win, and I think that she deserves to win. And I say that with Paul Thomas Anderson on the list. Also, I just saw Drive My Car over the weekend, and man, that That movie was written to within an inch of its life, and it was directed in a way that I don't feel like it could have been directed better. So all that being said, I'm fighting against that feeling too. And then West Side Story is
epic,
immediately rewatchable.
Beautiful.
It is the moment it ended, I wanted to rewatch it. And that's a huge signal right there. And I think Kenneth Branagh was so dialed into what he was trying to do with this project. I mean, this is the guy who directed Thor and then, oh, by the way, has been playing Poirot and directing Agatha Christie movies for the last 5 years. This is kind of his like one for me, I think. And I think it is a lot more has a lot more broad appeal than a one for me movie does normally. But all that being said, I think that the way that Jane Campion returned to feature filmmaking and chose this project, it seems like she's kind of like shepherding this thing to people from the beginning of like just hearing about this book, reading the book, and then putting it on screen in such an epic manner with the right people in place in all categories, not just acting, but cinematography and score and on down the line. I think that her as the captain of that ship is something to be admired and something to be awarded.
This is one of the two categories where I only have one person's name, Jane Campion. It's not that I wouldn't vote for her, and it's not that I think there might be a surprise, because I think both of those things might be true, meaning I might vote for somebody else. Hamaguchi did something to me. He did something to me in that movie, and it's because of the way he directed it. So I only have one name. I think Jane Campion will win. I think she should win, but I would hesitate very long time over top of her little square before I checked it, because this is a tough category this year.
Yeah.
And just really quick, Kenneth Branagh put Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is the movie that they watch. And I loved that movie when I was a kid. And the reflection in the glasses being colored.
My gosh.
Brilliant.
Everything's black and white except for anything that's movies or theater.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. PTA, his time will come. I promise you, his time will come. This
is not the movie for PTA to win a director award.
That said, he made a semi-uninteresting film that could have been boring as hell, very cool and hip and happening, and did it right. Spielberg, what can you say? You're exactly right. As soon as that movie's over with, you can't wait to watch it again. And it's the kind of movie you can put it on in the background. It's the kind of movie you can watch all the way through, focused on it. It's the kind of movie you can do other things while it's on, and it's still going to pull your attention. And it's all because of the choices of Spielberg. That said, we talked about it in the Power of the Dog podcast. And I think you said this. What you need to know about the narrative, the character's choices, all came from Jane Campion. What she chose to show you when he flicks the comb, when he flicks the flower, the way that Benedict Cumberbatch sounds when he's upstairs hovering over Rose, who's downstairs practicing. You never see him in that scene. You just see his boots. All of those are choices of Jane Campion. And once again, this is not a narrative that I ever buy into, but I do believe it's her time. And she's won everything else. Let's have two women in a row win an Oscar only because that's cool, not because of the glass ceiling breaking that would do.
Well, I'd say let's have the director of Nomadland win and then the director of Power of the Dog win.
Amen.
Why not that?
Absolutely. Scratch everything else. I'm going with that. What he said. Yes. Hands down. Very well put.
All right. So best original screenplay. We've got Don't Look Up with, I'm not even going to, because some of these have like multiple screenplay writers and things. Don't Look Up, The Worst Person in the World, King Richard, Belfast, and Licorice Pizza. Why don't you go first?
Who will win? Belfast.
What?
It's just an instinct. It's just an instinct.
What?
It's just an instinct. I don't know why. It's just an instinct. I don't ask me, because Coda took the Producer Guild Award. Don't Look Up took the Writers Guild Award. It's just an instinct. I don't know why. It just is.
That's not my vote. Let's just say that.
So that's who I think will win. What surprise? The Worst Person in the World. that would be a nice surprise. And then my vote is The Worst Person in the World. So
yeah, I kind of thought Worst Person in the World might get in there, because isn't that one of those, like, whether it's original or adapted screenplay, that's one of those, like, here's something that we want to, like, elevate. Get Out, for example. I mean, it's like, this is an amazing movie. Why isn't it competing at a higher level in all these other categories? But we're gonna definitely raise this movie up by giving it Best Original Screenplay.
There's also the statistic of, they try to give out, I think it's the last 3 or 4 years, where they've given out an Oscar for a different movie for each category. So everybody kind of takes home an Oscar. So so Belfast doesn't have one yet. So this could be,
that's true.
Could be either or. And I think that we're going to talk about later, Drive My Car is going to win international feature, but that's not a guarantee. After seeing The Worst Person in the World, it's not a guaranteed. I think there might be a coda thing happening with that one too. You got 2 charming, sophisticated young people at the leads of those movies, and they're doing something to people. There's something's happening with The Worst Person in the World, and it's because of the Oscars. So that's why it's kind of a mini surprise, because I won't be that surprised if it wins. But something's telling me Belfast. I don't know why.
Jeez. Okay. I did not think that the script was the best thing about Belfast. Actually, I think Licorice Pizza's script is better. I think that Worst Person in the World script is better. Yeah. So that's interesting. But anyway, let's move on to Best Adapted Screenplay. The Lost Daughter, Dune, Drive My Car, Power of the Dog, and Coda. I would love it for Drive My Car to win. I think do you think Power of the Dog is going to win, I guess? I mean, is that no? Okay. See, I haven't kept up on the screenplay races. Is this slotted for Coda, you think? Or
Yep.
Really? It's such a right down the middle.
They're going to want to give Sean Hayter an Oscar. They're going to want to give her an Oscar. And here's the deal. Think about it this way. I can never determine whether or not I'm voting from who I would vote for, or whether or not I think it's going to be a surprise, because that all gets convoluted in my mind, and who I think will win versus who should win. And then the Golden Globe means this, and the DGA means that, blah, 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 blah. And the precedence is this. But here's the facts. Precedences are meant to be broken. Statistics are meant to be broken. Back in 1989 or whatever it was, Ghost came out. It got tore apart. And I was like, watch out for that movie. I'm telling you, Whoopi Goldberg's going to win the Oscar. Everybody laughed at me. And I was like, watch out. It's going to be nominated for Best Picture. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, and it won Original Screenplay, which is the one that everybody flipped out about because everybody hated that movie critically. But sometimes the movie that made you feel the most and moved you into a place of, oh, I feel good about life right now. Whether or not you think it's as clever as Drive My Car, or as intense as The Worst Person in the World, or even as strangely left of center as Licorice Pizza, Coda did something to people. It did something to us, you and I. Yeah. We had that same experience, and somehow that's okay that people want to give it an award for doing that. And what did that? The emotional tone the director strikes, yes. The emotional tone the actors strike, yes. The chemistry between the actors, yes. That song at the end, yes. But that's all in the screenplay. That's all there. So just because it's not as trippy and puzzle-like and, Riddler put it together and I'm glad you came. None of that's there. But it is the movie that has spoken to people the most, has spoken to their heart their most, and they love her and they love it. So Sean Hayter, I was going to say she probably won't walk away with without an Oscar, but I don't want to say that because that's going to jinx her. So that's something that you have to take into consideration, that sometimes the most intellectually well-balanced screenplay is not the most important screenplay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I agree that Coda does make you feel something, much like a lot of these other movies that these adapted screenplays do. But it just seems like Coda is working with a different set of rules than Drive My Car is, for example. I just, when I try to compare the two, I just feel like it's not even fair. Like, it's not even fair to compare Coda to Drive My Car because they're two totally different things. I mean, it's like playing a regular game of chess and then playing that like 4-level chess in Star Trek that seems impossible to play, but I know that I'm sure there's people out there that actually play that game. But it seems like it's a different level of complexity to start off with for a movie like Drive My Car. It's like there's so many more roadblocks that could be problematic for the concept of Drive My Car versus Coda. Like there's a roadmap for Coda and there's a lot less of a roadmap for Drive My Car.
I'm excited about this. Because I totally feel what you're saying, because I will tell you this. Okay, so Coda will win. That's my guess. My vote would be Drive My Car. The surprise will be Drive My Car. So I'm good. I'm good with whatever happens. Okay, so let's backtrack that for a split second. There's a roadmap for Coda. So if and when it gets lost on its travels, it will get tore apart even more, because you're like, there's a roadmap. She doesn't like her life. She falls in love and jumps off of a mountain with a kid at a river. She speaks with her mother about the mother-daughter relationship. There's a roadmap for that. So if you get it wrong, how could you have gotten it wrong? It's written already for you. So the fact that she hits the notes so precisely and perfectly, that's hard to do, to keep in line with the already preconceived notion of what I know the roadmap is from seeing these scripts of these movies that we've watched our whole lives. So technically speaking, if you reframe that discussion, it might have been easier for Drive My Car to be more complicated because it's a more complicated subject. It's a weightier subject. The character development is different. It's more complicated. So they got all that right. But if they had gotten that wrong, it would have been this, and I'm sure there are people out there who believe that that's overly long, pretentious theater stuff that I don't want to hear about some guy running his lines in a car. I, on the other hand, was thrilled about that because that's exactly what I do.
And his wife's voice is amazing, so that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. Oh, and the beginning of that film is amazing. When she's telling the story, you're like immediately hooked.
I think for me, in the way that you're saying that, it makes me think that it's like, so Coda made me feel something, even though I knew that Coda was trying to make me feel something. So my initial reaction is to fight against that and be like,
absolutely.
Oh, now you're going to do this. Oh, fine. Right. Whatever. Oh, now there's going to be a scene at the end where she sings. Great.
And then the moment she starts to sign, you're in your mind, you're going, this is going to tip me into tearing up if she starts. Oh, here she goes. And then I'm a ball of tears. And I've watched that video a couple times and it makes me well up each time. It has something about it that just completely works. The emotional impact to Drive My Car had me for the next 3 or 4 days. Coda still has me. Coda will not let me go. It will not let me go. And I'm not even that, I'm not even that big of a Coda fan. I just said that Troy Kotsur, he's great, but he wouldn't be my vote. And I won't be disappointed that he wins, but there will be a side of me that I had wished somebody with a differently textured performance would have won. But that doesn't mean that because Cody Smith-McPhee is technically a more etched into subtext character, that doesn't mean that's any easier or harder to do than what Troy Kotsur did, because he took us and made us believe that somebody who can't hear could hear her. Not what she was singing, but he heard her. I don't know if that helps at all.
I mean, it does. It makes me feel a little bit better about, Coda winning. But yeah. Well, let's talk about Best International Feature. Is Drive My Car going to win that, you think? I mean, that's my pick, but okay.
Yes.
I think that, and it seems maybe it's going to be a knockdown drag out between that and The Worst Person in the World. Although we haven't really talked about the animated films, but Flea is kind of like a, what do they call that? A 4-quadrant movie, or I don't know what it's called, but it's like, it's in international, it's in animated, it's in documentary. It's just like we want to make a movie that's going to have the best chance of winning an Oscar. Let's do this now. And I don't know too much about it. I know it's a very serious subject matter, but still, I mean, it's being recognized. So I think that's really cool. And I need to seek it out. I've been trying to catch up with the big movies. So I'm finally done with that. And I have not seen Lunana, A Yak in the Classroom, or The Hand of God. So I can't speak to those either. But I think between the two that I have seen, I'd pick Drive My Car.
Yes, I agree. And the surprise would be the worst person in the world, and I will be pleasantly surprised and happy with that. But my vote would be Drive My Car. There's nothing about that film. Like, can you imagine me not voting for that movie? I mean, come on. It's written for everybody, but it is very specific to something and a language that I know very well. I know all of those situations, like deeply know all those situations, with the exception of the tragedy that happens at the beginning of that film. Thank goodness. That said, reframing what you were saying about Flea, they made a movie that finally was able to be in a bunch of different categories. They didn't make a movie to be in a bunch of different categories. They made a movie about a tough subject that was a documentary that happened to be animated, that happened to be in a foreign language. It just happens to fit in all those categories. So good for them, because they broke the glass ceiling on that. That's never been done before. And I don't think it will be done again in a long time. Now, granted, people might be doing that now, making an animated foreign language film to try to do that, but it's been done at this point. So I think that's going to documentary, and then the other two categories will come up. But at the same time, no one thought Parasite would win both. You even said there's no way it's winning international, and if it does, it's not winning Best Picture. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, okay. I was like, I think it's gonna break that barrier down, and I think Flea's gonna do that too. But it's gonna be documentary, and then the other two categories are gonna be open for foreign language, and then the other one.
Nice. All right. Well, let's quickly talk about score. I think that whoever came up with this list has not watched all of the movies this year, because I'm kind of shocked a bit. I think that 3 of these spots could be taken up by Johnny Greenwood. I think Dune's going to win. I hope Dune's going to win, because the 2 that I think should be on there are, now I haven't seen Parallel Mothers, so I cannot say anything about that score, but the 2 that are on, that I think should be on there, are Dune by Hans Zimmer and Power of the Dog by Johnny Greenwood. But I mean, the score for Spencer was great by Johnny Greenwood. And Licorice Pizza didn't really have very much of a score, but he made some very poignant pieces for that particular project too. So I don't know. I'm going to say Dune, and then maybe Power of the Dog. Dune's score is so powerful that that movie would not be the same without that score.
Well, I was just looking up what Hans Zimmerman won his Oscar for, and it was The Lion King, actually, which I would not have thought that that's the one that he won for, but that is. So this category is not anything that I ever speak with any authority on, because sometimes you point the score out and I go, oh yeah, I did hear that. Oh yeah, that was there, but it's not the primary focus for my life until I see a movie a second time or a third time, or it's been pointed out. And I go, oh, I have to listen to that, which I think is a benefit and maybe not a benefit, because the benefit is that you become absorbed. I become absorbed, and the score just allows me to flow through it like the river through the movie. But am I disconnected enough not to take all that in? I don't think that's what it is. I just think that there's enough going on in a movie that sometimes I don't. That's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I walk out, unless it bothers me, unless it's like not. And they usually end up being not good scores. At least that's what people say. But I have no musical ability, so I have a musical appreciation, and my life is musical, and I love music, and I love soundtracks and scores, and I used to love the overture to a show. You know, you get a little bit of all the songs plus a little bit of way they connect. I used to love that when I was a kid. And because people were like, just go to the first song. I'm like, the overture. Mom would be like, dude, we're going to be here for 2 hours. Like, it was the overture. It's only 3 minutes long. It's the same length as a freaking song. Play the overture. So I think you're right. I think Dune will win. I think Johnny Greenwood would be the surprise, but I would vote for Parallel Mothers. Because that is a score I did recognize when I was watching it, and it's heavy, and it's bombastic in a way, and it's almost overwhelming to the point where it might detract from the film, but it also needed it so it could blanket you from the emotional impact of what was happening to you watching these characters. Like, it helped me get through some stuff. There were a couple times I pulled myself away from the movie and just paid attention to the music. So that never happens to me.
Wow.
And, I'll sit in an emotion forever. I thrive on it. But there's a scene in that movie. Ugh. It's just, I was like, nope, I'm separating. I'm pulling myself out of this. I'm coming away from it. I'm going back and I'm just going to listen. And the score kind of didn't allow me to leave too far. It only allowed me to go, this is a weird comparison, but when the Sorcerer Supreme hits the Incredible Hulk and he separates from his body.
Yes.
That's kind of what was happening. I was pulling myself away, but the score would not let me leave. It would not let me go somewhere else. So for that matter, and when I saw that it was nominated, I was like, that's my pick. That's what I would vote for, because I never have that connection with the score. So, but it would be nice that Johnny Greenwood finally had an Oscar, considering he scored 3 movies. And you're right, Spencer is haunting. Now that's a movie I started to separate myself from and would not come back to a couple times, especially in the old house scene when she goes back to her home. I was like, I'm out of here. I will stand in the aisle and watch this from far away. I am not watching this. It's too much. It's too much. But some of the scenes when she's running down the hallway and what he's doing with the score there is powerful. So it'd be nice to see Johnny Greenwood win, but Dune is Dune. And I mean, it would not be Dune without that score.
All right. So last but not least, Best Picture. We've got Nightmare Alley, Don't Look Up, Dune, Drive My Car, Belfast, Licorice Pizza, The Power of the Dog, West Side Story, King Richard, and Coda.
It's a good list.
Yep.
Always about a month before the Oscars, everybody starts talking about what a crap year 2021 was for movies. And then we get to our Oscar picks, and then we get to our top 10 and we go, what a great year. You and I never have that problem. Never.
No.
We never talk about what a terrible year in movies. This is not a terrible year in movies. It's a spectacular year in movies. That list is solid. Okay. Who will win? I think The Power of the Dog is going to pull it out in the last moment. I really do. I think that Coda, for all the reasons we talked about, and it won the Producers Guild, but there's a precedence for that. It won the Screen Actors Guild. There's a precedence for that not being Best Picture. Everybody's like, oh, if they won the DGA. Hold on a second. Ron Howard won the DGA and wasn't nominated for Apollo 13. Ben Affleck won the DGA and wasn't nominated at all for the Oscar, considering it won Best Picture. So there is a precedence, but there's not. So Coda could win, and I'll be okay with that for all those reasons that we talked about earlier.
Well, look at Green Book.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Which, by the way, has been bashed on since. And I think some of the criticism is a solid discussion, but people loved that movie when it came out. Critics loved that movie when it came out. We liked it when it came out. Now it's like, in hindsight, everybody wants to bag on it. I'm telling you, movie Twitter is brutal. Like, I would never engage with any of those people. Not that I'm better than them. It's just I'm scared of them because they're brutal. And one person put it the best way. Just because you think that The Power of the Dog has more weight artistically doesn't mean you felt anything less from all the feelings you felt from Coda, which is almost what I was saying earlier on.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with Coda winning. I'm fine with it, but The Power of the Dog will win. But here's the statement. West Side Story could be the surprise, and don't count it out for anything. Anything. Don't count it out for cinematography. Don't count it out for production design. Don't count it out for director. Don't count it out. If it won, it would go back to that same strange statistic. Best Picture, 1961, Best Picture, 2022. Never happened before. It's never been where a play or musical that's been transposed into a movie has won the Oscar twice. So that would be a nice little statistic breaker there. It would make people's minds would be blown, but nobody in the light of day on Monday will have a problem with West Side Story winning anything that it wins. It's a spectacular event. And so don't count it out. But I would vote for Drive My Car.
Whoa, really? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, that's your movie, though. I mean, like you said, that's your movie.
I mean,
that makes sense. I'm not shocked by that. Yeah. Okay, for me, I do think Power of the Dog will win, but in the same way you may be tipping your hand for our next episode, I would absolutely love it if Licorice Pizza won. And I know that it's not going to happen. I also said that about Parasite too, but
A little bit of a different scenario, though. A
It
little
is.
bit of a different scenario.
There's zero precedent for it. It's not the movie that's going to be the best picture. But if I was going to vote for the best picture, that's what I would pick, just because of everything that's wrapped up in all of it. And I haven't really talked about the movie. I didn't really say much about Paul Thomas Anderson. Didn't say much about cinematography or about the screenplay really at all. But I think that you put all of that together and it is like the essence of Paul Thomas Anderson and the culmination of Paul Thomas Anderson. And I think that the crazy part is that Punch Drunk Love was the culmination of Paul Thomas Anderson, and There Will Be Blood was the culmination of Paul Thomas Anderson, and The Master was, and Phantom Thread was, and now Licorice Pizza is. And so I think that for a filmmaker to be able to build upon each thing, and he makes curios, and so this is another curio, another thing to have kind of like on his shelf, and it makes me excited for the next thing that he's going to do.
Well, what is fascinating to me is that what you said makes perfect sense, and the way that you said it makes perfect sense. And if you had told me what Licorice Pizza was about, I would have been like, wait, what? How does that fit in with Boogie Nights and all that other stuff? But it totally does. And I said this on our podcast that I thought that it was like the coming of age version of Punch Drunk Love. It has a sensibility, and that might be PTA himself and his thumbprint. That said, if it won Best Picture, I would love it for this reason, because it would turn everything on its head. The Oscars would never be the same. No one could complain about the unoriginality of the picks. No one could complain about surprises we always knew because the Screen Actors Guild and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And the movie that people, next to Nightmare Alley, it's probably the movie that people are like 0.1% chance of winning. Like they really don't think these films have a chance. Even King Richard sort of has been floating around in the cosmos recently as a possible surprise Best Picture winner. And I could see it. I just love the fact that he's in the running again, Paul Thomas Anderson. And the movie was described in this article I just read about 10 movies that were not appreciated in its time. Now, Licorice Pizza has been appreciated and has been debated. And the fact that it's off-putting, and I'm using that term in a very particular way, off-putting in some of its subject matters that we've talked about, some of the controversies that we've talked about, but it's also off-putting in its disposition and its tone, and you can kind of feel the pimples on your face breaking out when you're watching it. It's got this really off-putting sensibility, left of center thing. Like I said, he's walking in a different world. Like he's from a multiverse and he's in the wrong world. He's from like Planet 22 and we're like Planet 9. He's come here and he's doing all that stuff. But Licorice Pizza was the modern day movie on this list that wasn't appreciated in its time. But 10 years from now, people are going to look back and say, this is a masterpiece. This will be Paul Thomas Anderson's masterpiece. Now, I think Phantom Thread still is going to be that, at least for me. I just want to say this, any kind of production design, well, I actually have something different for production design. Any technical awards, I think it's going to be a Mad Max Fury Road year, and Dune's going to win everything. And if you clearly remember, that's what I said when we did the Dune podcast. You were like, is it going to be nominated for anything? And I was like, everything. Acting, I'm not so sure about, but it's going to be nominated for everything. Although Denis Villeneuve did not get a nomination, which is shocking. That's shocking. Maybe part 2 will win him his Oscar.
Maybe they're doing the Peter Jackson thing. They're just like, wait for
Peter Jackson
end.
Was nominated for all 3 of those. So that's really not the same thing. But it would be great to win for a part 2. Although Francis Ford Coppola won for Godfather 2 and not the first Godfather. So there's the word again, precedence. So anything technical is going to Dune.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.